I'm a white woman in her 30s. I'm sitting in front of a white wall. I'm wearing a black top with a blue scarf, and I have brown hair tied in a knot on my head. So this evening we have with us two wonderful artists for this conversation. We have Jess Curtis, who is an award-winning choreographer and performer, committed to art making practices informed by experimentation, innovation, critical discourse, and social relevance. And he's also the artistic director of this performance company, Gravity, based in Berlin and San Francisco. We also have with us Jerron Herman, who is a dancer and writer and is compelled to create images of freedom. And it's so wonderful to have you here. A little more practical information before we start. We have our wonderful American Sign Language interpreter, Hannah, working, and also Christine later. If you require the CC caption, that is automated and you can access it by going to the banner at the bottom of your screen and clicking the white CC icon there. And we will have about 15 minutes of questions that will be opened up for the audience. And you can either unmute and turn your camera and ask yourself, or you can write in the chat if you're more comfortable to do that. Or if you would like to ask something anonymously, you can also write to me privately in the chat and I can ask on your behalf. And I would just like to remind that we aim for a safer space, that we wish this space to be inclusive for everyone and to invite respect for difference and holding multiplicity. Language or behavior which undermines anyone in any way isn't tolerated. And we thank you for being here with our values, and we thank you for your presence and your contribution to this event. It's an X-Dance Festival event that's supported by the Goethe Institute Finland. And this will be recorded so that it can be available on the X-Dance Festival YouTube channel afterwards for those who couldn't be with us tonight. So that said, unless I've missed anything, we have Sally in the background also who's supporting this event. Thank you, Sally. But unless there's anything else, I would be really happy to hand over this talk on allyship to Jerron and Jess, if you'd like to start by describing yourselves and introducing yourselves. Thank you.
This is Jerron. I'm passing over to you, Jess.
Okay, sure. Hi, I'm Jess. I'm a middle-aged white guy, although I'm not sure if I can say that because I just turned 60 and someone said maybe 60 is not middle-aged anymore. I'm wearing glasses. I have a shock of very unruly white hair on my head. That's usually, yeah, kind of like that. I have a goatee today, although my facial hair does change often. I have a couple of earrings in my earlobes, surgical steel earrings, leftovers from San Francisco in the 90s. And I'm wearing a blue shirt, and I'm actually not in the evening, I'm in the morning in my kitchen in San Francisco with bright yellow walls and my living room behind me with a poster that I love on the wall that says Forgeries, Love, and Other Matters, which is one of my favorite pieces by choreographer Meg Stewart. Yeah, that's me. I'm really super happy to be here and really honored that Jerron agreed to have this conversation with me.
Yeah, I'm Jerron. I am that's Jerron, yeah. I'm a dark-skinned Black man in my early 30s with newly blonde hair, cut short, and facial hair. I'm wearing a gray shirt, and there are two pieces of artwork behind me as well that are kind of oatmeal and cream, large canvases. And I'm in New York City right now, and it is afternoon where we are. And it's really nice to be here. Yeah, to think through these things with we've known each other for a while, Jess.
Yeah,
However,
I was thinking I think we met the first time in 2016 when Claire and I were performing in New York, and we hosted this symposium that you were part of, that I was super happy for you to be part of.
Oh yeah.
That was really fun to get to know you then, and been sort of tracking your work since then. And you're working now with a friend of mine, also Alice Shepherd, and we just missed each other here in San Francisco.
We sure did. But I think we're always like on either sides or do it, that's how it works in our industry writ large, that you take up space where someone else just was, which I actually really like. It was really awesome to be in San Francisco and the Bay Area in general, because I grew up in the Bay Area, and I don't know, for whatever reason, this time around coming back, there was such a new electricity around the legacies of disability, creativity, political action that I was unaware of growing up there. And so I was really happy to reinvest in the area as an artist, as an adult. So it was a homecoming of so many ways, really. It was a beautiful experience.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think things have really changed, and even in my life, being an adult, I mean, I grew up north of here, but in my experience of how things have changed in the last 30 years since I moved to San Francisco, there's a lot of new stuff, and Alice's work in particular, but there's also a legacy of companies like Access. I'm working on a project with Access Dance starting. I'll be in the theater with them for the next 2 weeks. A new piece by Mark Brew is premiering on the 22nd, and I'm working with them around access. One of the things that actually didn't make it into my intro there is that one of the major projects I've been working on the last few years is around a program we call Gravity Access Services, which is providing audio description for other artists, which came out of having learned about audio description through collaborating with Claire Cunningham in our last project, and doing a bunch of research, and then realizing, oh wait, nobody's doing that in San Francisco or in Berlin, particularly in the sort of free contemporary scene in either places. And so we started to do that a bit. So been busy doing some of that.
I mean, but I think I mean, this is a big question, but do you identify as being non-disabled or disabled? I've never known.
I'm at the moment, no, I don't identify as disabled generally, although I occasionally identify as temporarily disabled. I had a big accident in June, and I needed a walker for a while, and then was for several weeks, and have been using a cane all summer. And so I don't really identify as disabled, but I did book special services for my trip to Germany in July and back. So I think it's one of the things that I've learned also in my work in the last 20 years has been something about the fluidity. I think Petra Kuppers writes in her book, I think about the temporarily non-disabled people, that in some ways we're all moving on an arc that usually arrives at reduced mobility or various kinds of things that are normally called disability toward the end of our lives. And I feel like that fluidity has been an important kind of function in, or thing of thinking in my life, of like how, and that I've learned a ton from. I also several years ago had my hip replaced, and for the year before my hip was replaced, I also needed a cane to walk and couldn't stand for long periods of time, and had a lot of needed a lot of accommodation in different situations, especially in the contemporary art world, where it's been in the last 10 years very in vogue to do groovy installation works where nobody has a chair and you're supposed to stand comfortably for an hour while artists do interesting things. And
right.
And those moments have been really also interesting and taught me a lot. And actually Claire, in working with Claire Cunningham was an amazing mentor in that way, and going, no, you need like, ask for a chair. Like, that's like, this is, or we would go somewhere together. We were touring together at the time when I was also using a cane at that point. And we would go somewhere together, and Claire would be like, no, we need to ask for someplace to sit during this groovy in the dark installation or something. And I think also encouraging me at different moments to ask, to say that there's something about asking for that it can also be a kind of allyship, just being aware of like, oh wait, and mentioning to artists that I know, like, are you aware that there are a lot of people that this is not comfortable to stand in this way, or to people that can't see over, if you have people standing around a performance, and then there are some people who can't see over those people who are standing, and unless you make it accommodate them. And Claire often said, I think all contemporary dancers think everyone in their audience is exactly like them, like between 22 and 38, and bendy, and able to jump up and down and stand all the time. And it's like, that's not the case.
Right. Oh no, it definitely isn't. And I think there is some kind of weird, maybe undercurrent of recompense or sweat equity that contemporary artists they seek, for the as payment for their work from the audience. We must pay fealty through our marathoning standing and commitment to standing to view this work. I did also, it makes me think about last night I went to a really awesome outdoor party hosted by an artist, Jimio Olawale Kasoko.
Yeah, he's amazing. I love him.
My gosh, amazing. And it was called Black Joy Sessions. And it was a kiki, right? But it was a kind of it was a critical party, if you will, wherein we were very conscious of like the political statement of nothingness, or kind of not, of kind of the interlocking ways of Blackness being too much and not enough. And so there was a really lovely interplay between that, where it, dancing by the fire, or sitting down, or eating a piece of chicken was as much, or as you had to do. And as I was speaking to people about why that was important to them, or why that was in them, I was being to use a phrase that I heard from Stacey Milburn, dueling me into ways of kind of joyfulness, of being. And so yeah, I think that I will echo you in terms of people within our relationships will will kind of guide us to understandings of ourselves, right? Maybe not explicitly, but they'll guide us to like really, really good and fruitful ideas that would like help us survive and help us to thrive. In particular, I am thinking about that article where Stacy talks about dueling with Leah Lakshmi, Pipsana Samarsina, and just how both of them could be contemporaries and still share and still mother and father, and that work is so beautiful to me, that there is no kind of hierarchical thing. And so I reflect on that, just because you and Claire seem the same, like ebbs and flows between each other. And I feel a great kindred reality here in New York City with artists like Ezra Bennis and Shannon Finnegan, and Jeff Casper and Kayla Hamilton, where that feels like we're doing that concurrent blending and guiding work. And it's very important. It's very important. And it's relational, right? It's like, it's not through sessions, it's through moments where you can share. Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, Claire has been really, for me, the sort of most emblematic of that. And I like to think, I like to, in a way, be an advocate for hierarchies and say it's not that there aren't hierarchy, that there's no hierarchy, but there are multiple hierarchies that go in different directions between us. That, it's like a hierarchy can be anything that is like, I'm older than you. So if there's, in a hierarchy of age, not that means what people often think it means, but
the power is taken away. Of it in a way.
I feel like people are always like, it's like we're not all exactly the same, and I might have more experience at doing one thing than you have, but you have more experience at something else. And acknowledging that difference is also, I think, an important thing. And with Claire and I mean, the sort of history of our relationship, from her not being a dancer at all and being in a piece of mine, and then starting to make her own work, and then hiring me to advise her on her own work, and then me hiring her to be a performer and collaborator in several pieces, and then us finally arriving at this place of us really, really dynamically co-producing something in our piece, The Way You Look at Me Tonight, was really fantastic. And learning, like I said, I've learned so much from her. I mean, obviously she was really a major entry point for me into the sort of discourses around physical diversity and disability, but also just around artfulness, around different ways of making things and thinking things in a different way, like the way she creates work that I think accessibility is really important to her, not just in the sense of sensory accessibility or rolling access, or but also in the sense of like making work that people can really feel and will understand, and that is not always some conceptual mystery. And that I've learned a lot about that from Claire, and humor and access in that sense of access. So
oh yeah
I
love that. I think there is a way in which the work that corresponds with disability in any silo or genre feels like it doesn't get that merit of being art, or being, it feels like the default is that it should be this personal biographical story, you know, that propels the art form. But you know, what I've loved of what I've seen from so many is that you're making work as an artist, and you're inserting lenses that are on you, but you're not making it central in a trite way, which I've always loved. And so, because in relationship to non-disabled art making, there is, you know, biographies are not, or autobiographies are not lauded as much as, you know, or it's like it's part of the whole canon of work. It's not necessarily the only thing that they expect, you know, I don't know, an Irish artist to make, or a, you know, blonde artist to make, you know. So there's this interesting the rigor that is being held and catered to is really exciting. What are you still curious about as you make work? Yeah, and collaborating.
I mean, the term access has continued to be very central in my work. And I mean, the last two projects that I've worked on, and the project that we're now fundraising for and hoping to make in the next year and a half. I mean, I didn't, when I went back to school in my 40s and did a PhD, or maybe it was my 50s, in my so I finished in 20, so I guess that was my early 50s. And I did a lot of work around perception and phenomenology, and really kind of, I wrote my dissertation largely looking at how do we experience performance, and through which senses, and in what ways does the experience of performance transmit, or transmit, is it transmitted into our bodies and around and onto our bodies and our experience. So in doing that, and then, I mean, my pieces always kind of leap out of the last piece. So with Claire, when we had 2 weeks at the Place in London to just look at really embedding access into our show. So building audio description, staging, having a staged sign language interpreter, so that we really had a choreography for sign language interpreters that we would meet and rehearse with in each city. And thinking about that, and seating that was immersive and that really allowed people to feel the performance around them and not just be visual. And that sort of, I mean, I feel like I've always been quite, I've always felt like the best place in a dance is being in a dance. You know, that my experience of dancing is really centered in my own body, and going, well, you get to watch it from over there in the seats, but it's really amazing over here in the middle of the dance. And so I've been really wanting, and sort of on a theoretical level, thinking like so many things are going on in the audience's body that are not just vision, and sometimes our focus on vision really flattens everything, and especially literally flattens everything when we're looking at each other through a screen like we are. And and thinking about how do I make my work more three-dimensional, and how do I make it more immersive, and how do I make it more accessible to more people who, you know, if they aren't seeing it or aren't hearing it, what are the barriers to that access that I can drop, or we can figure out ways around. So I've been really interested in that. And the last two pieces that I worked on, I worked with two blind performers and a mixed blind and sighted cast, and then sort of simultaneously evolving this audio description service that several of the performers that I work with are also working with us, working in that team to make work, help make other people's work accessible. So I don't know, that I find that really fascinating at the moment to go, okay, how do I experience this if I don't see it? I just did a project with a blind collaborator of mine, Gerald Pirner, who's a blind photographer and art critic in Berlin. And we just made a sort of a podcast or a recording that's downloadable, will be downloadable next month from Tanzfabrik. That is we call it a movement experience, a Bewegungserfahrung. It's in German, so maybe we have to translate it to make it more accessible to people who aren't German. But at the Berlin Wall, it's a sort of a 40-minute experience of being at the memorial that is now the Berlin Wall, and I find it really working with Gerald and going, okay, how do we even bring people to the beginning point of the piece, and just having to solve that riddle. And he's like, no, you can't really say that. No, that doesn't really work for me. Like, and no, just watching him figure out his location in space based on the traffic noise of the two streets on either side. Sort of fascinating. Anyway, it's a long answer to your question, but those sort of phenomenologies of perception and kind of breaking down what are the sensations and the perceptions that I make meaning in my life from, that my experience comes together to, and how is this different, like for a person using a wheelchair than it is for a person who's standing? How is it different for a person who's using a cane? And in this recording, we sort of really foregrounded Gerald's experience as the sort of model experience of, for a blind person who uses a cane, here's what you need to know. And so everybody who will listen to it's available to everyone. And if you're in Berlin and you speak German, I highly recommend it, and I hope somebody will help us to translate it later. But but it's really interesting as a sighted person to go like orient yourself and go like, now feel with your cane for the concrete block that's in front of you, and go like, oh, wow, that brings a whole different experience to me in doing it.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I'm feeling I feel that a lot because, man, I just feel that the process of making art accessible needs to mirror the practice of making an art piece in general. Like, it needs to have the same amount of research and creativity and trial and error and aesthetic like underpinning. And it needs to be contextual and what would serve that piece. Especially, like, that's the one thing that I felt more comfortable assuming, because everything with respect to service or accommodation, there it's going to be that people will want it to be systematized and knowledgeable and infallible, and yet it does not correspond with the lived experience or body mind of the disabled people of the world, or even of non-disabled people's understanding of disability. So this flux needs to be actually center to embraced, because it needs to model what the experience is enhancing. And I love what you said about the best part of being in a dance is in the middle. And it is true. It's like the nature of performance really is for this audience person to want to be in the middle and can only get so close. Again, it is just torture. Like, I think honestly, performance is just torture for not people who are not performing. I every time I see a show, I feel this ache, right? I feel this ache of joy and of loveliness, but ultimately it is to want to be there. And that's how I know that I've seen something that I really love. It's that I want to be there. I'm remembering a show that I did, a dance space project with my collaborator Molly Joyce, and when we were concepting our audio description and transcription inserts, we found that the lack of the venue's technological advancements was a real big deterrent. And thankfully, we like conceived, because we couldn't do live transcription, which was a bummer because we wanted someone to like be writing the text as it's coming, you know, as it's, and then we did overheard audio description as well as a way to like subvert the kind of ghettoizing of audio description.
Right.
And or at least not the ghettoizing, but like it's only
Sure.
is particular and kind of only in a corner somewhere.
Yeah.
Or for the people that requested it. I think that's way more what we really wanted. But in so doing, right, you know, so we have this recorded transcription with the text that's being overheard. After the show, non-dance people and dance people relate to me the increased dance vocabulary they were introduced to based off of what that were related. So the text related to what they were seeing, and they were able to have more language for what they were seeing, which I found incredible, and something that I was unintended, and that there was just greater context for, you know, what our orientations were on stage. And I think that it really is like the inclusion of access it doesn't assume that you know what you're seeing or you know what you're experiencing, and it is to kind of relay or endow a special vision of like the artist's intention, the things that you should be looking. I mean, like art itself, or like cited art is already curating and is already curated. Like the lighting design is set in a way so that you see something when they don't want you to see another thing. You know, so why would we dismiss that in access, right? Why wouldn't we curate or make like, I think about access as giving someone enough information for them to make their own decisions. And through that, it's just me lovingly giving them as much that I, you know, think corresponds to the piece. And I don't always get it right, and there are gaps. And in fact, that's why the community is so important, because they will fill the gaps when they need to, as I've experienced. So yeah, that's all I had to say about that. But I
think that's really, I think that's really important, that there's not a single authoritative version of, and I think that the sort of more traditional audio descriptions, I think, you know, coming from a good place of wanting not to layer or tell people what anything meant, sort of maintain this objectivity or this illusion of objectivity, which I think, you know, in a postmodern, post-structuralist world, like objectivity doesn't exist really.
Right.
And so objectivity usually ends up meaning the point of view of a middle-aged white guy. And we play a lot with that in different ways, both in my work, where the last piece, all the dancers are describing what they're doing all the time. And so you're hearing 6 voices talking about what they're doing, and at different moments talking about what each other are doing, and it makes for really fun and funny dynamics. The duets where 2 people are just saying what they think the other person is doing are these amazing humorous moments. But yeah, to me, it's a really rich space where something that from one angle comes out of, I mean, it could be seen as like, oh, it's about access and it's about, I don't know, Jess being an ally of blind people or something, but actually in the end it's like, no, this is me being interested in something and becoming a collaborator with blind people who have blind and low vision people who had a really particular experience that was really relevant to the process. And what I
Yeah.
love is that at the end of my last or going into my current next project, it partly came down to, I mean, I just wrote like we had a great time working together, which I think comes out of some of my sort of collective background working in San Francisco and ways of working that I think are really about collaboration and not about top down, like I tell you what steps you're going to do. That's not at all how I work.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes being a hippie really helps.
Yeah, I mean, it works. You have to find some rigor you have to squeeze the hipness through the rigor machine. But what I loved was that when it came time and like my manager was like, Jess, we have to write another grant proposal. You're not going to have anything to do in 2022. You know, and like, do you have any ideas? And I'm like, well, the main feeling I have about making new work is I want to work with that group again. I want to see how many of those, if those 6 people and the composer and the set designer and costume, if like, do they are like, we had a really nice crew and are people down for doing that? And that was kind of the main motivation, was going, yeah, let's work together again. And now let's figure out something that somebody will give us some money. What's a question that somebody will give us some money to go to the studio and ask about, try to make some answers.
Well, any question is worth money, and any question you ask is worth money.
Well, I mean, I really need to credit Sarah Shelton Mann, who I worked with, who was the director of Contraband. And she was kind of the first person that I think said that to me, like coming out of college, and was the middle 80s in San Francisco. And she was like, no, I don't, if I already know what I want to say, then it's boring. Like, why would I do that? Like, I start work, my work always starts with questions, and that really stuck with me as a really useful way to think about work. Like, that the work is a laboratory. It's a laboratory, and having research questions that might not have simple answers, or we might not even arrive at answers. But if we're really digging in with our mobilizing our curiosity about that question and about each other and about how we work and who we are, then that's a really rich space to work in.
Oh, yeah. I love that. I mean, curiosity and like authentic curiosity has really been my litmus for engagement with anything, you know? So I really appreciate your stating that, and also giving it a gerund, like, you know, mobilizing. What was the second word? Oh my gosh, I just forgot it. Curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's lovely. I really love that, because it's like we're on the move to our curious nature. Makes it active, which is always, as they teach you in school, is always better than passive.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You know, not passive, not active, just is. But you do something that I really appreciate and really want to dive into, which is kind of touch both sides of the world, like, you know, the US and internationally. So what would you say are the differences, tenets of, you know, allyship in either that you see?
That could be very long, and I'm aware that we've only got a couple of minutes if we want to give people a chance to ask questions. But I'll just say, I feel like in a way that the moving back and forth and the sharing of information is the differences is the center of what I would consider my allyship. That by working in the UK with Claire and with there's a company in the Midlands, Blue Eyed Soul, that used to be there, that I was my first experience working in a physically diverse setting with disabled folks, disabled artists, and then going, oh, there are all these things that aren't happening in Berlin. Let me bring let me just start telling people like, oh, well, I was just in the UK and we did these things, and these artists were actually on stage and not just in like social programs to learn to dance because it would be good for them. And then bringing that to California and going, oh, wait, but here there's a rich history of Access Dance and Eric Cooper. There's a number of artists working more with physical diversity and self-identified disabled artists, but in a different way. Like when I first started working at Seeing Access, they were bringing in professional non-disabled choreographers to set work on the company. And it was a deal when Judy Smith first went, oh no, we're bringing a disabled choreographer. And really that difference that I saw in the UK of like, oh, there's really, professional artists who identify as disabled bring a really particular, have just a rich, an amazing amount of information to share with us, or to share with the world. And so kind of that, bringing that to California and going like, right, where are the professional disabled artists in the Bay Area? And I feel like there's still, in a way, not enough opportunities and not enough spaces for that to be happening in California, in both places. I mean, Berlin has really taken it on, but and it's kind of exploded, but also Berlin has a cultural scene that goes like, oh wait, this idea is missing, and the federal government gives a lot of money for people to really dig into it. So places like Sophienseele, Tanzfabrik, and now Radial System are all like, doing really, I think, investing in those questions. I keep waiting for one of our hosts to jump on and go, it's time now for questions. Oh, there's Georgie.
Georgie, did just ask for questions.
Hi. Yeah, I mean, you're in such a great flow, and I also don't want to interrupt that. So I was asking the audience if they do have a question, please, now's your moment, or we can allow just that space to formulate. And you're welcome to ask through the chat, or to just turn your camera and microphone on to ask the artists directly, Jess and Jerron directly. And if not, like we said before, don't take it personally. It's because what you're saying is already so rich. And yeah, if you'd like to continue, that would also just be great. I think we're just chomping at the bit listening to you.
How do we pin? Yeah, anything?
Well, I could ask. Well, let's see if I have a question that I can formulate. But, thank you so much, because what you're saying is all really so inspiring. At least, especially how both of you spoke about including this access or allyship so richly in your artistic processes, and especially how this, I also see how the art space is this space to not get it quite right and to fail. And in light of that, I'm interested in sort of this failing allyship kind of. Is there this way to sort of, I identify non-disabled, or as Jess said, on this temporarily non-disabled place, and I'm interested from my position, like, to hear what this kind of well-meaning allyship that's maybe in the way, or what is it in your experience for this?
Well, I mean, that's a great question, Georgie. Failed allyship is actually, to me, very different than well-intentioned allyship. the difference I see is that failed means the opposite of what Jess just brought up, which is that there wasn't a commitment to the individual. And that's marked through, I guess, like any relationship, through you naming what is important to you. So if equitable pay, if time and energy, and or, you know, any personal attachments or personal needs you have are not, you know, thought about and produced, then yeah, that's a failed ally. Because I think there is, for me, it's all about relationship.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, I find the word failure, like one of the things, I guess, in the positions that I've had where I'm, I don't know, working with Claire or presenting or speaking with non-disabled people who, I mean, for one reason or another, sometimes non-disabled people who are curious about increasing their support of disabled artists are like, well, they'll invite me in, or with our access services, we're now offering consultations to organizations to make their spaces and their programs more welcoming to disabled people. And one of the things, like, we do that as a team with 4 different people with different kinds of disabilities, sharing with these teams of organizations. And I often come into that space as the non-disabled person. And one of the things I'll say to people is, you're gonna fail. Like, don't be afraid to get it wrong. You're gonna fuck up, excuse me, and somebody's gonna get angry at you or not, and you're gonna learn. And the thing you need to do is listen and be curious and listen to disabled people and really take them to heart and not think, I mean, I think that's, I don't know, that's the space that I've, again, curiosity and listening and not assuming that disabled people are somehow less or than you or have less information or like they're disabled people are the experts on their own experience and you need to learn from them. So there's, I think the worst kind of failure is not doing that, or is keeping some old mindset of like, oh, I'm here to help and do this sort of social program to help these people have a fun experience in a dance studio, and as opposed to going like, well, what, you know, really listening and going, what do I have to offer that somebody, what do you want from me as I have this kind of experience making dances and happy to share it.
Yeah. And ultimately, if you want to, if your desire is to make your engagement with a disabled person become non-disabled, or kind of, you know, if the good of your interaction with disability is to subvert it or otherwise like erase it, then that is maybe a moment of rethink. Like, if the good is to become less disabled, then I bet that's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just reading Pete Dunn's message. Thank you. Yeah.
Our pleasure. Yeah.
Indeed.
Hi. Since it's so very silent here, I could try to ponder a little about this allyship. My name is Sari Alavara. I'm from Finland.
Hello, Sari.
Hello. I come from the disability community, and I found it very handy that there's this allyship concept, because we need allies certainly we do. And I also like to think about it like, I agree with all that you guys have said. One thing that I do question a little is the term temporarily non-disabled, because that's getting a bit close to the saying that disabled people have to face from non-disabled people, like that. Well, aren't we all disabled?
Yeah.
And I don't see you disabled, and all this that is diminishing, not healthy. So that I am a little hesitant about. But allyship is a very needed and good thing, and I feel that I can be an ally, maybe somebody else in some other concept that I don't know, because for example, I work for Culture for All service, which is promotes equal opportunities in the field of arts, and we have people from different minorities working, and and we try to support each other, to be allies to each other, and to the culture field. So I love this concept of allyship, and I did like also the question about failing, because we're all too familiar with that too. And but I have danced a bit and have had great opportunities to grow even by dancing. And when it's been somebody who is non-disabled, there's a leading or teaching, then there's absolutely no problem if there is this feeling of being seen as another human being, and not some other something else or something other, and like curiosity was mentioned here. It's good if it's good curiosity, and if it's not like I don't know how to say it, but I don't know if
and not like exploitative.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. But I don't know if I have a clear question or anything, but if you would need to tell somebody right now, to give some examples of good allies, or if somebody is pondering like, am I a good ally? What does it take? What does it take?
Jerron. Or I mean, I don't know. I mean, as a person who well, actually Silva sent us an article that I think it's a good question to keep asking in a certain way. Like, am I a good ally? And listening. And I think for me, listening is one of the main traits that I feel like serves me to feel when I get I don't know, good feedback on my work in the world being work that people feel like is in alliance, is being an ally, that it has to do with listening and really seeing people and seeing what's really there, who's really there, and not having prefixed categories that I'm dropping people into categories and then seeing them only as a certain category. And just continuing to learn and listen and ask people what they want from me, on how we can work together, and also think about what do I want from them? Like what do I get out of this situation? What is the kind of exchange that we're having, and how do I benefit? And what am I bringing to the table, and what are other people bringing to the table? And is it right? Is it equitable?
Right. You know, I think about how I even got into dance, which was through Sean Curran and Heidi Latsky, who are both, you know, very lauded modern dancers, white, non-disabled, but came from a legacy of atypical, like, company structure. You know, they came from Bill T. Jones, Arnie Zane, and I think that somehow, in a weird way, their legacy, trickled to me in them identifying me as a dancer. And so I'm really curious about that, right? Like, I'm very curious about how they didn't have to have, like, they specifically didn't have to have years of like community action or political alignment to get the artistic maybe curiosity, or to go upon a hunch. And so that kind of, I love that is available to how allyship is created as well, which is possibly spontaneous. And I do love that there's spontaneity in allyship, and it doesn't have to be forever. Like, I love what you just said, Jess, about like you do have to create new relationships to someone's identity as you move forward. You know, like, similarly with Heidi, I found that I was a student, right, in the very beginning, and then I was a administrator of her company, and then I'm now no longer with the company, but I am a friend of the company, and our relationship shifts accordingly. And the support does need to allow for there to be flexibility and expansion. And I think that is, and it also is on a one-to-one human level. Like, you know, it would be weird to categorize, like, I'm going to be an ally to everyone in this group. Can you really do that successfully, right? Who are you usually and going to be very aligned with based off of the characteristics that you yourself share? That sustains it.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's, if I could, I think that's super important to go, like, not everyone in a category. Like, I mean, one of the great things about Claire and I premiered our piece at the Unlimited Festival in London, and to be in such a rich environment of so much work by disabled artists was really, you know, amazing and then to go to a bunch of work and go, no, I don't like her work. She's, you know, and Claire going like, yeah, this is the whole, like, disabled people need to have the right to make bad work too, or make work that we cannot like, and
1000%.
You know, and finding the artists that I resonate with, and really having that as a ground for the allyship. It's like, I don't even have to think about it as allyship. It's like, no, I work with Claire because I really love working with Claire and I really respect her work, and then all the rest kind of falls in place.
Indeed.
Thank you so much, Jerron and Jess, for this really generous, rich conversation. I wish we could go on, but I also have to thank our interpreters, Christina and Hannah. Thank you for making this possible to understand. And I would also like to promote Jess's workshop that's happening over the weekend. It's both days, 3 till 6 in Finland, but bright and early in Eastern Standard Time, 8 till 11 in the morning. I can personally recommend. It'll be really, really rich, really awesome. I'm going to be there. Can't wait. But yeah, otherwise, good night, good day, good morning. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining and being here today.
Thank you. Thanks, Jerron.
Thank you, Jess.
Thanks, X Dance Festival, and Sally and Silva.